Aragorn stood at the base of Dwitmore Berg, his breath visible in the biting cold. The mist hung heavy, curling around him like tendrils of a living thing. Before him, the hooded figure glowed with an unearthly orange light. Its radiance seemed alive, flickering like flame, yet steady as stone. The figure's voice carried a weight that stilled even the air. "Do not ask my name, son of Arathorn," it began, its words both resonant and ancient. "I have walked beyond the year of the trees, beyond even the memory of your kind." Castine nodded, speechless, silenced. Aragorn's grip on Anduril tightened. Though he was no stranger to cryptic words, the presence of this being unnerved him. "Then speak plainly," he said, his voice steady but low. "Tell me what must be done. How can the dead men find redemption?" The figure's glow pulsed faintly, throwing Aragorn's shadow across the jagged rocks. "Redemption," it said, "is never given freely. It is earned through deeds and sacrifice. The dead men have chosen their path. They march not under your banner, but toward shadow. Yet their actions will not be enough." Aragorn's brow furrowed as the figure's words coiled in his mind. "What must be done?" he asked again, stepping closer. The figure tilted its head, its hood obscuring any features beneath. "There is only one way to cleanse the stain upon them," it said. "A sacrifice must be made, one that only the blood of Númenor can offer." Wait. Aragorn froze. The weight of the words pressed against him like the mountain itself. "What sacrifice?" he demanded, his tone sharp with urgency. "When the time comes," the figure replied, its light dimming slightly, "you will know. Your choice will determine not just the fate of Gondor, but the fate of your soul." Aragorn opened his mouth to speak, but the figure began to fade. Its glowing form dissolved into the mist, leaving behind only silence and the echo of its words. His fingers faltered, and he glanced skyward. "Wait!" Aragorn called, his voice rising in frustration. "Tell me more." The mountain did not answer. Aragorn stood alone, the chill of the air seeping into his skin. For a long moment he did not move. Anduril, though steady at his side, felt heavier than it ever had before. Finally, Aragorn turned and began the descent. The weight of the hooded figure's words hung over him, a storm cloud of doubt and destiny. Far to the south, the dead men of Dunharrow moved through the mist like a tide of shadows. Their green glow cast an eerie light on the barren land, marking their path toward the Anduin. At their head, the king of the dead marched with purpose, his hollow voice rising above the whispers of his spectral host. "We betrayed Isildur in life," he said, his tone both commanding and sorrowful. "Now, we will prove our worth to the living. The corsairs of Umbar sail to strike Gondor. We shall be the ones to end them." The ghostly host stirred in agreement, their forms shifting like smoke caught in a sudden wind. The curse weighed heavily upon them, but for the first time in centuries, their steps carried a purpose beyond their endless wandering. Meanwhile, the corsairs of Umbar gathered at the river's edge, their fleet a grim silhouette against the horizon. Black sails billowed in the wind, and the cruel laughter of their captains echoed across the waters. The largest ship, adorned with crimson banners, served as the command vessel. On its deck, the corsair captain sneered as he gazed out over the darkening river. "Gondor is ripe for the taking," he said, his voice dripping with confidence. "Their defenders falter, and no aid will come from the west. Soon, Minas Tirith will burn." But as the corsairs prepared for their advance, a faint green glow appeared on the horizon. At first it was a mere glimmer, a trick of the light in the mist. Then it grew brighter, spreading across the landscape like a creeping flame. "What is this?" one of the corsairs muttered, his hand tightening on the hilt of his sword. The captain stepped forward, his expression turning from amusement to unease. "Shades," he spat. "Do they think to frighten us with ghosts? It's the Emperor's wishes, and not forbidden." But before he could bark another command, the dead men surged forward. Their spectral forms passed through the trees and across the waters as though the world itself bent to their will. The corsairs scrambled to draw their weapons, but it was futile. Swords and arrows passed harmlessly through the spectral host, their edges finding no purchase in the immaterial. The dead tore through the corsair fleet like a gale, their hollow wails filling the air. Ships splintered under the force of their assault, masts crashing into the waters below. Men screamed as their bodies were cast into the river, their forms swallowed by the unrelenting tide. On the command vessel, the captain swung his blade wildly, his strikes cutting through empty air. "Cowards!" he shouted. "Fight me, spirits!" The king of the dead stepped forward, his translucent form glowing brighter than the rest. His voice echoed like thunder. "Your time has come," he said, raising a spectral blade. With one sweeping motion, the captain fell, his cries silenced as his body crumpled to the deck. When the last corsair ship sank beneath the waves, the dead men gathered at the riverbank. For a brief moment, the green light of their forms dimmed, as though the weight of their deeds pressed heavily upon them. "We have struck a blow against the enemy," the king of the dead said, his voice low. "But does this prove our worth? Or are we still bound by the curse of Isildur?" The spectral host shifted uneasily. Though their vengeance had been swift and terrible, the question of redemption remained unanswered. As the dead men lingered by the riverbank, far to the north, Legolas of Mirkwood was haunted by visions he could neither understand nor banish. The elf, known for his calm demeanor and unshakable poise, found his thoughts drifting into strange, liminal spaces. At first, the visions came in fleeting moments, flashes of golden leaves falling into an endless void, a sense of vast seas roaring beneath an endless void, but now they pressed upon him with the weight of a vivid dream. Legolas stood apart from his companions, his keen eyes gazing into the distant horizon. The misty expanse of the Dwimmelborg loomed behind him, but his mind was elsewhere. He saw images of trees aflame, their branches reaching skyward as though pleading for salvation. The light of their leaves, once golden and bright, dimmed as shadow crept across their forms. The ground beneath them cracked, and in the darkness below, he saw movement. A figure, cloaked in fire, its orange glow mirroring the hooded being Aragorn had described. The figure seemed to shift in shape, never fully solid, neither man nor beast. Its presence filled Legolas with unease, but also a strange pull, as though it called to something ancient within him. In another vision, he saw the waters of the Anduin running red with blood, spectral forms moving beneath the surface. A great city, its towers shining with silver light, rose on the horizon, only to crumble into ruin as the ground beneath it gave way. When the visions passed, Legolas found his breath quickened, and his hands trembling slightly, a sensation utterly foreign to him. He steadied himself, but the questions in his mind grew louder. He turned to Aragorn, who walked a short distance ahead, with Andoril glinting faintly at his side. "Aragorn," Legolas said, his voice calm but laced with an uncharacteristic tension. Aragorn slowed his stride and turned, his brow furrowed. "What troubles you, my friend?" Legolas hesitated, searching for the right words. "There is a force at work here, something beyond what we have encountered before. I see visions of places I have never known, of a power that should not be." He paused, his gaze narrowing. "I fear the encounter with your hooded figure has stirred more than the dead men. It may have awakened something long buried." Aragorn studied Legolas, his own thoughts heavy with the cryptic words of the glowing figure. "What do you see in these visions?" he asked. Legolas's expression darkened. "I see ruin. A city crumbling beneath a dark wave. A figure cloaked in fire, standing atop a shattered peak. It is as if the world itself is unraveling." Aragorn's face grew grim. "This figure you describe, it mirrors the one I met at Wimberg. It spoke of a sacrifice I must make, but it gave no answers, only riddles. Perhaps its reach extends further than I feared. Henceforth it will have a faith and follow me toward the forefront of some new adventure." Legolas nodded slowly, his gaze returning to the horizon. "Whatever its purpose, it stirs the threads of fate. I can feel it pulling at the edges of the world, as though something old is trying to awaken." As Legolas's visions weighed heavily on him, the companions continued their journey toward Minas Tirith. Gimli, though outwardly focused on their path, could not ignore the tension that gripped his friends. He watched Legolas's distant gaze and Aragorn's furrowed brow, sensing the silent burdens they carried. "What now, Aragorn?" Gimli asked, his voice gruff but concerned. "You've led us through shadow and whispers, but the weight on your shoulders grows heavier with each step." Aragorn glanced at the dwarf, his expression unreadable. "We march to Gondor as we must, but the road ahead is clouded, and the choices I face grow darker." Legolas spoke without turning. "The hooded figure may not have given you answers, but it has set something into motion. I fear the echoes of its words will ripple far beyond the dead men." As the trio pressed onward, the horizon grew darker, and the storm of destiny gathered overhead.